Hey, vinyl community, how's it going? So it's Thursday night, back here with my two good friends, Gary from Physical Format Rock and Roll, and of course, Chris Profi from Chris Profi Musically Obsessed.
Hardcore.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've got Joni Mitchell behind me, and I'm flat doing the devil horns.
And Mary Chapin Carpenter.
Yeah.
So if you can't tell by the records that Chris has behind him tonight, we're going to be talking about 5 of our favorite singer-songwriters, and we're going to be showing our favorite album by each of the ones that we've chosen. I can only speak for my list, but I tried to do a mix of maybe some artists I haven't talked about before, but then some that I just can't get away from. They're definitely my favorites, ones that I've listened to the most. But we're going to start with our first pick, and we're going to go Gary, Chris, and then myself. So Gary, if you want to start things off.
Okay. So I kind of did a little bit like what you just said, Jeff, but there's ones that I thought, I have to put them on this list. My first pick, if you had asked me this last year, I wouldn't even probably known who you were talking about. But I am going with Janis Ian for first pick. I'm not going to really number them, but I really think I have to use the word underrated. And I know we love to say, this is such an underrated artist. But the only reason I'm saying this is because I was ignorant to her before Chris started talking about her, one of our other videos. And, I knew the song at 17. I had no idea who sang that, but it's on the Between the Lines album, which I have that also. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know this song. I remember this from way back. That song came out in 1975. But then I realized there's more to this artist. Definitely singer-songwriter. A fantastic voice, has a message to be heard, writes on social issues, has the heartbreaking love songs. The song itself at 17 is, about being an outcast, how awkward it is when you are not part of the in crowd. You're not one of the beautiful people. There is something about you that's a little different. And most of us, besides sexy people like Chris, we've all had those kind of feelings, when we're young. Janis Ian actually started out as a teenager. Her first hit, she was only 15 when she had it. That was 67, something right around there. Society's Child was the name of the song, which is crazy because it's about, an interracial romance. And the fact that she put this song out when she was 15 because of a couple that she had seen together. And she, being naive, had no idea that would cause an uproar, but it did. And she ended up, becoming pretty chummy with the people at the time. She was friends with Hendrix and Janis Joplin and whatnot. And she ended up going through a lot of crap herself, but then kind of came back. Like I said, had another big hit in 75. She's still going. She's never really stopped. And it's just funny that I, never really knew anything about her. She actually just put an album out this year, which is going to be her last studio album, she said, and she's doing a final tour. So, I would say if you have any interest at all of, this is an album that Chris just gave me, and this is really good because it's just her and her guitar. Definitely fits into the whole singer-songwriter category, and it's fantastic. This is great. I'm not really sure which one I would recommend first. Maybe one of her ones from the 70s, but if not, I would recommend this one. It's a great listen. And anyway, I would recommend that if you are interested in getting into her, do it now. while you have a chance to possibly see her live one more time. So that's my first pick.
Well, that's awesome, Gary. I mean, I feel like you and I have been on the same page because I'm also going to show Janis Ian as my first choice. I remember. Yeah, well, and I'm glad you said all that because I can basically just say ditto whatever Gary said because you basically, told a lot of good information about Janis Ian. I remember when my parents gave me the record Between the Lines that you were talking about that has the hit At 17 on it. And I remember playing the song at 17 and I was blown away. And then I listened to the rest of the album. I'm like, holy shit, this is awesome. And then I remember listening to this record and Gary talked about the song Society's Child. And this is the album that's off of. And yeah, like you said, she was a teenager when she was writing these songs. Plus, she was arranging all of her music. She told all the musicians how to play it and where the instrument should come in. I mean, she was arranging music when she was a teenager. I was freaking picking my nose when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And I wanted to show another album too, because I always feel like I show that record. This is another good album of hers called Night Rains. This was a 70s record. And this is kind of what the singer-songwriters started to do in the 70s. I think they started to move away from kind of the folky singer-songwriter sound and start to bring in some more instrumentation. And all of them were doing that at this time. I mean, you can even tell from the front cover that Janis Ian sort of going for more of like a more commercial look. But it's still a really good record. And like Gary said, she is performing live. I'm hoping to get tickets because she's coming to Woodstock, New York, which is about 40 minutes from me. And the tickets have not gone on sale yet, but she's playing in Woodstock in November. So I'm hoping to go see her. I've already seen her live once. And she puts on it was just her and her guitar. And we were talking before this started, and Gary was mentioning how he sort of thinks that a singer-songwriter is someone who should just be able to get up there with his or her guitar and play the songs. And that's what Janis Ian does. So yeah, I'm happy that you're into her now, Gary. And anybody else out there, if you haven't really checked her out, but you're into singer-songwriters, definitely give her a listen.
And just one more note onto there. She's not, her music isn't just all like folk kind of music. She definitely has some every now and then some funk, some jazz, some rock elements into some of her songs. She has full bands on a lot of the songs too. But it kind of goes back and forth. Like people did in the 70s a lot.
Yeah, and
like
she's also
Diamonds and whatnot. So.
She's brought in singers to sing with her. She does a song with Dolly Parton. She also does a song with Willie Nelson. So, and I know she's done some stuff down in Nashville as well. So she's done it all sort of. She's just a really cool artist.
She even doesn't she do some like Yoko Ono caterwauling on some of her songs as well?
I haven't heard any Yoko Ono stuff, but thank God.
I don't know. I don't know Janis Ian. Maybe I'm just misremembering something.
I think Jeff is going to need a Janis Ian VCLT.
I think he does.
I don't
know if Jeff would like it or not.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I know Craig from A to Z Music Cave, and I think he bought a Janis Ian record. Yeah, because of me as well, and I think he kind of digs her. You either like her or you don't. I mean, she's not sort of, I don't know. It's sort of like Yaz. You either like it or you don't.
I've never met anybody who hasn't liked Yaz, Chris, so I'm not sure that's a correct analogy, but
well, you know what's funny is, and this is off topic, but Jeff was doing his shitty album covers video the other day, which I think is freaking hilarious. But he was talking about the Neil Diamond records. So I was thinking about doing top 10 Neil Diamond covers. So be on the lookout. He's got
some good ones.
Yeah, be on the lookout. I might do one of those.
I would look forward to that. I would relish that.
But I'll give you props, Jeff. I'll mention your name.
All right. Very cool. Well, Mine obviously is not going to be Janis Ian. So sorry. But my first pick is going to be, people call him the Canadian Bruce Springsteen. And yeah, I grew up listening to him, and I still to this day listen to him. Talking about Bryan Adams, obviously. Bought my first real 6-string, summer of '69, total classic. Actually, no, I'm sorry.
Wait. Wasn't the summer of '69 about the Kama Sutra?
I don't think it was, Chris. I think you're mistaken. But all right. Anyway, all seriousness aside, I'm sorry. I can't go an entire video without being a total goofball. But anyway, so for real, but the first one I'm going to show, he's not somebody that immediately comes to mind when you say, oh, a singer-songwriter. There's probably about 50 people you would think of before you would think of him, but I think he is one of my favorites nonetheless. I'm going to talk about Morrissey. Yeah, I'm going to talk about Morrissey, and he is a singer-songwriter and a damn good one at that. Of course, he was on the Smiths, and then the Smiths broke up, and he had what I would consider to be a pretty successful solo career. But, all kidding aside, there's something about Morrissey that I just love the hell out of, whether it's his kind of snarky lyrics and just his entire, I guess, perspective on everything. He's not afraid to shy away from kind of taboo subjects. I mean, there's a song on here called "You're the One for Me, Fatty."
Love that song.
I mean, who else does that? I mean, seriously, you're going to need someone by your side. I just love it's so heavy. I mean, the thing about this album was, he'd had Viva Hate, he'd had Bona Drag, which was more or less kind of a singles compilation with some other stuff thrown in there. But then he put out Your Uncle, which was very much, I think, underwhelming, a letdown. It was like, okay, well, he's going away, unfortunately. But then he came back out swinging with us. Nobody saw this coming. This, to me, is as big a departure from Your Uncle as Achtung Baby was a departure from the Joshua Tree. It just came out of left field. And just when you thought, like, okay, well, his best days are over, he came out with this album. And it's just great. I mean, it's heavy in spots. It's got the same sort of, I don't know how I'd classify it, but he's just got it's British, but it's also in spots kind of sarcastic, self-effacing, or whatever you want to call it in spots. But yeah, I just love it. It's always melodic. He always gets a great band behind him. And it's not that far from the Smiths. If you like the Smiths, you're going to love Morrissey's stuff as well, because he didn't stray too far from that formula, and he found great guitarists. Even though Johnny Marr is one of the greatest guitarists of the 80s, he managed to find always like great guitarists to back him up and to put the music behind the words that he would write. But just no other songwriter like him. He's controversial. He's in your face. He's funny. And he doesn't suffer fools. I mean, he's sort of like almost like an alternative Roger Waters in a way. He's not afraid to sing about topical stuff, but he puts a funny spin on it. The song after, or the album after this, I love the title, "We Hate It When Our Friends Become Successful." It's always like he says these things, or he sings about things that are harsh truths that a lot of people are afraid to admit. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm going a little bit overboard on Morrissey, but I think he's fantastic.
No, dude, I love Morrissey. My favorite album by him, is it pronounced Vauxhall? Is that how you say it? Yeah, I
think so.
And that's got that song, "The More You Ignore Me, the Closer I Get."
Yeah.
Which is awesome. And I also love Southpaw Grammar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great album. And Southpaw Grammar was when he started to get sort of like a 90s edge to his songs.
Yeah, no, I mean,
That's a kick-ass record.
that is well, and the first track on here is "The Teachers Are Afraid of the Pupils."
Yeah, I love the titles. And he's got a song called Lifeguard Sleeping, Girl Drowning.
Yeah,
It's
I
awesome.
know.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad you mentioned Morrissey, because a lot of times, and I fall into this trap too, when you think singer-songwriter, you go right to the 70s and you think of people like James Taylor and Dylan and all that. But I mean, the definition of a singer-songwriter is just that. They sing their own songs. So, I was joking with you guys earlier today and I said Blackie Lawless from Wasp, but he could technically be considered a singer-songwriter because he writes his own freaking music.
Yeah. Yeah, we hate it when our friends become successful is on here. I thought it was on Bog Hall and I, but that was the one you were talking about is
The More You Ignore Me.
Yeah, The More You Ignore Me, the closer I get, which is, such a classic stalker manifesto if there ever was one. But anyway, so yeah.
So by this point, nobody's watching this video because we spent about 10 minutes talking about Janis Ian and 10 minutes talking about Morrissey. So now nobody's watching.
They're going, I thought this was singer-songwriters I would know.
Well, but if we're gonna sit around and talk about Bob Dylan and like all the obvious ones, John Prine. I mean, it's like, okay, well, yeah, obviously they are great singer-songwriters, and I think most people know who they are. And I'm sorry if either of you picked Bob Dylan or John Prine as part of your list, but I think we're trying to Bob Dylan was a bit of an easy pick, but
I like Dylan, but I'm actually getting tired of hearing about Dylan. And again, hopefully nobody picked Dylan. I mean, if you did, I like Dylan, but it's like Gary's taking his Dylan record out now. He's replacing it. Damn it.
I will make sure that I get a Morrissey album. That will be one of the next things that I buy, because you guys are always talking about it, so I will get something by him. How about this? I will throw one in here. This is an obvious one. Jackson Browne.
Nice.
Going to put him on here. This is, of course, Running on Empty, one of his biggest albums. And, it's kind of neat. This is almost like a concept album talking about life on the road and, running on empty, right? All the songs are kind of tied into that type of thing. And I think he is part of that whole, whatever, country rock almost type thing, but he's a little more on the folk side than, like, say, the Eagles. And this is another artist that, he had asked me a year or two ago, I never would have picked, because I've always known about Jackson Browne. Who the hell doesn't know Jackson Browne? But I never really took his music seriously and really paid attention to it and bought an actual album to where I listened to more than just one hit and realized what a great songwriter he is. I mean, he manages to tell stories in his songs. He can create characters. He does the good heartache type songs, and he's got a wonderful voice. He definitely has a great singing voice, and I just think he's worthy of being on my list. By the way, my 4, 3, and 2 picks are pretty much interchangeable. So the order is just wherever I picked it.
yeah, he was, I would say he had one of the greatest string of, first 5 albums of, any artist. I mean, I love The Pretender. I think is great. Late for the Sky is great.
Yeah, those are excellent.
He really could do no wrong in the 70s. And unfortunately, I think he got a bit overshadowed by like Bruce Springsteen and, some of the other artists. But, he was somebody who, and I don't know if anybody's watched the Eagles documentary, but Glenn Frey talks about how, they used to share, or like his apartment was right above Glenn Fry's apartment or something, and he could hear like Jackson Browne like just go like composing his songs and playing the same riff over and over until he got the lyrics. And so
yeah, he said he heard him playing, I think, writing Doctor My Eyes.
Yeah.
And, you know, he said, yeah, you're right. Glenn Fry said, I realized that's how you write a song. It's work. It's a craft, you know. And he said Jackson Browne had that, and he does. He's a craftsman. And I think the album that he put out last year was very good. So, you know, he's still creative. I think that's wonderful.
Well, and he transitioned well into the 80s too. He didn't lose any, you know, his quality didn't diminish, you know, in the 80s. I mean, if anything, he was still putting out great albums in the 80s as well, which not a lot of artists can say that. You know, a lot of times, you know, the 80s came and unfortunately they got sucked into the whole, oh, now I'm going to do adult contemporary, or I'm going to go into the whole synthesizer drum machine thing, you know. But yeah, I think he maintained his integrity throughout his entire career. He never sold out. He never compromised, you know, his values as a singer-songwriter, and maybe never got the acclaim that he deserved. But yeah, I grew up, my dad had The Pretender and he had Running on Empty, and he played those endlessly growing up. So I was a big fan of Jackson Browne. You know, even as a kid, I loved his stuff. So
wonderful.
Yeah, I need to get more Jackson Browne. I have Running on Empty, but I need to get more of his stuff.
Well, the great thing is that, and I think this is another thing too. There's certain things, once I started going back collecting vinyl, that make it easier to listen to certain artists, because like Jackson Browne, you can usually find some of his stuff pretty cheap.
Yeah.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, there probably aren't a lot of Mo-Fi pressings of Jackson Browne.
Well, and I hate to say it, but he's one of the few artists, like at one of my local record stores in the dollar bins, they actually have a Jackson Browne section in the dollar bin, because like you say, I mean, they're great albums, but they sold really well. And for whatever reason, people unloaded them in, you know, great quantities, unfortunately. But yeah, they're very easy to pick up, but they're worth getting. They're all great albums.
Yep. Well, I'm going to go with one of the most popular singer-songwriters ever. And, you know, you guys know that I play the guitar and sing. And when I play out and I play one of this artist's songs, the crowd, no matter where I am, they love his songs. And I am talking about John Denver. And John Denver is an amazing, in my eyes, an amazing singer-songwriter. This is a killer record called Poems, Prayers, and Promises. And the song Poems, Prayers, and Promises was a big hit on here. But this also had Take Me Home, Country Roads on it. And this also has Sunshine on My Shoulders. He covers the Beatles' Let It Be. And he also covers James Taylor, Fire and Rain on here. John Denver, great guitar player, great singer. His songs were simple, yes, but they had a great message to them. And he had a knack for writing a melody that would just stick in your ear. There was like a movie about him that came out, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so. And I remember watching it, and, you know,
The Muppet movie?
No, not the Muppet movie. But, and that's a good Christmas album, actually, John Denver and the Muppets. But, you know, just the tragic story of how he, you know, died in a plane crash. And, you know, I think he actually cheated on his wife. And that's where the song Annie's Song comes from, I believe. And I don't know, he just sort of had one of these typical, it was almost like a rock star life, but he wasn't really a rock star. It was like a rock star life within the singer-songwriter vein. But I mean, I don't know, maybe some people think John Denver's hokey. I love John Denver. I love to sing and play his songs. Like I said, whenever I do Take Me Home, Country Roads, people freaking love that song.
Oh yeah.
And you know, he's just a great singer-songwriter.
If you go out to Colorado, they're going to play Rocky Mountain High.
Yeah, I have a lot of his records, but I was going to show this one too, I Want to Live. I like the cover of this record. But
I don't think I've even ever seen that one.
Yeah, it's a good album.
You know, what's funny is I remember like right before he, not too long before he passed away, there was kind of a resurgence in his popularity because, I remember him playing down in Columbus at the amphitheater they had down there, which got all the big acts that played down there. And he was there because I remember seeing it and I thought, that'd be a fun show to go to. But at that time I was, too busy with bands like Stone Temple Pilots and all that shit. And so I didn't go do it, but I kind of regret that now. I would, it would have been nice if I would have been able to do that. And I'm sure the way things are now with people liking a lot of older music, that he'd still be going, he'd still be selling tickets.
See, my thing is I look at John Denver as a rock star. So I'll be like, yeah, I'm listening to John Denver. And people will be like, why are you listening to John Denver? Why John Denver? But I don't know. I just think he's great. So
yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Well, when you were talking about when you play live and you play any of this artist's songs, people go crazy. I did not expect you to say John Denver. I actually expected you to say this artist, because I used to be a wedding DJ and I would get the exact same reaction. Whenever I'd play any of this artist's songs, people would go bonkers. And I'm sure, and it's probably still true, Chris, I'm sure when you play any of this artist's song, you get the same reaction. But
yeah,
Bill freaking Collins, and people don't think of him as a singer-songwriter because he's so closely tied to Genesis.
Right.
No, all right. I stop me, okay? I'm sorry. I can't take any video seriously.
That's all right.
All right, but no, seriously, okay. The next artist I'm going to talk about, next singer-songwriter, I didn't get into until like the early 90s, even though his stuff was all over the radio in the 80s. Gonna go with Elvis Costello.
Nice.
And I don't really hear many people talk about Elvis Costello that much, but I think he is one of the most gifted singer-songwriters of not only the 70s, not only the 80s, but also the 1990s. I mean, you've all heard his hits, Accidents Will Happen, What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding, and Every Day I Write the Book, Oliver's Army. I mean, so many classic 80s kind of alternative new wave. He's kind of lumped into that whole new wave, like with Joe Jackson and, some of the other artists of the day. But, he's somebody who his sound has evolved over time. It's matured, but some might call his lyrics pretentious, and I don't think you'd entirely be wrong, but I still love the fact he's got so many influences. I mean, he did a country album. He does stuff he does jazz influence. He does punk. He does new wave. He does harder rocking stuff. I mean, there's nothing that he's not afraid to tackle. This particular album is called King of America, and it was one of his first albums without the attractions after a while. But you've got Brilliant Mistake on here, which is great. He does a cover of Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood, which was a Nina Simone and the Animals covered before him. I'll Wear It Proudly, which is great, but it's just a really mature album. And his lyrics are, I think, brilliant. I love his lyrics. I love just the way that, he can take, look at a relationship or politics or anything, but he's just got such a unique perspective on so many different topics that he writes about. And he collaborated with Paul McCartney, for crying out loud. I mean, they collaborated on almost an album's worth of songs, half of which ended up on Paul McCartney's albums, like My Brave Face, and some of them ended up on Elvis Costello albums like Veronica. But I mean, he really, I think, was the closest thing to a John Lennon type songwriter that we had in the 70s and 80s. And I've got most of his stuff, not so much his more recent material, but he's really prolific as well. He puts out almost an album a year. So
yeah, I like him. I have a few of his CDs, but I think I need to get some more of his stuff.
Yeah, me too. I think he's definitely an artist that has managed to, like you said, he's prolific. Yeah, he manages to kind of keep that cool factor. I mean, I don't think anybody really says, well, you know, Elvis Costello just sucks. You know, you might not be a big fan of his, but I think he's always been well respected. You know, he manages to be a bit of a chameleon, but yet maintain his inner core there, you know, because when you think of when they started out, you would have thought, like you said, you know, well, he's kind of slightly new wave punk, you know, and all that. And he changes his sound to where he has matured, but he's still interesting. You know, whatever he does, you might not necessarily like it, but it's still interesting. You know, he's never boring.
Yeah, no, and that's the whole thing. And he wears his influences on his sleeve. I mean, Get Happy is like a Motown Stax tribute album, Almost Blue, even though it's got a jazz-like cover. It's a total, I mean, it's an entire album of like George Jones and, you know, some of his favorite country artists. It's a total country rock album, more country than it is rock. But, you know, he was into Cole Porter, and I mean, he was into like all the American standards, and he just did all of it well, did all of it convincingly. You know, he fell into kind of into the trap. A few albums in the early 80s where it's a little bit too much. He was trying to get into like the synth pop whole thing and didn't quite work out so well. But then he kind of found his way again, and King of America was kind of where he found his footing and decided, you know what, I'm not going to try and follow the trends anymore in the 80s. And he kind of, you know, did his own thing. But yeah, definitely worth checking out. Even if you start with his greatest hits and work your way backwards, you know, I think you'll find there's a lot to appreciate.
What's the country album he does?
It's called Almost Blue.
Okay.
And it looks like this.
All right, I'm adding that to my Amazon cart.
Yeah, you totally dig it. It's got Why Don't You Love Me Like You Used to Do, Sweet Dreams, which I think Patsy Cline covered.
Yeah.
He does a Flying Burrito Brothers cover.
Cool. Yeah, I'm definitely going to get that. Dude, the vinyl on Amazon of that is $45.
Wow, I've got the vinyl. I just show CDs because they're easier to kind of hold up.
And here's the thing. The CD is $11.99. So what do you think I'm getting? You're right. The vinyl. No.
Yeah.
The CD. Fucking $11.99 for that. Wow. Sorry. I've just dropped the F-bomb. Sorry.
Jeff allows a couple times for you to say that, and then that's
well, wait, now that the CD is out of stock, thanks a lot, Amazon. All right, I'm feeling like Jeff needs to do another rant video on Amazon. That's bullshit.
Yeah, I hear. Well, one day it's there, and then the next day it's out of stock, and you'll never see it again. But
yeah, but I do want to get that record though.
Well, if I ever see it, I will. If I get my hands on a copy, I'll definitely send you one. All right, Gary, your third pick.
You know what? I'm totally changing what my pick was going to be because I'm still hoping one of you two will talk about this artist. And I feel if you do, you would be more eloquent than myself. So I'm throwing that one out and I'm putting another one in. And that is Tori Amos.
Wow.
And here's one of my favorite of her albums. I just think that Tori Amos is somebody who is very unique. Yeah, you know, there's probably the most famous one. You know, we all knew from the Sunflake song there, but it's like she is this artist who is in her own world. You know, I mean, you might say, okay, she's kind of along the Kate Bush line or something, but I don't think that there's anybody that quite sounds like Tori Amos. She's an amazing piano player and a songwriter and a singer. The way she uses her voice, I think, is what makes her really unique. The way she goes really high, you know, to accent something and then comes back down. But her songs are just, you know, they're just, I can't help but use the word unique, I guess, when I'm describing her, and emotional. Her songs make you feel something when you hear her sing. Once again, I would say about her, like what I said about Elvis Costello, is personally, now this is just me, I'm sure some people totally would disagree, but she's never boring. Yeah, she has some very low-key songs, but there's always something brewing in there, in her songs. So that's I threw out the one artist to throw her in there. I wanted to just mention Tori Amos a little bit.
Well, I think this album is a masterpiece. And I'm not kidding. Like, I think this one, there's not a bad track on it. And it's got industrial moments on here. I love the song God. I love the song The Waitress, you know, where it's just like very quiet. And then, you know, like the middle part there where it's just like she goes, you know, I believe in peace, bitch. You know, that whole thing. Cornflake Girl is on here, but it's just like an embarrassment of riches. Yeah, but it's just a great album. This is the first Tori Amos album I ever bought, and it just blew me away because, you know, I loved piano players, singer-songwriters, but I never really heard a female singer-songwriter that reminded me of Elton John like she does. And she's the whole package. Her stuff is great. I love the album before it. But yeah, you know, I think she came around right at the right time when that whole alternative scene, the whole grunge thing, I think she fit in so well. And she was just a unique voice on the radio. I think, I don't know if Fiona Apple was influenced by her, but I hear a lot of Tori Amos and some of Fiona Apple's stuff as well. But
I never thought about that, but yeah, that's very true. Yeah. I
wonder if, you know, Fiona Apple would have had as much, you know, I don't want to say success because it's not like she's topping the charts or anything like that, but I think Tori Amos opened the door to a lot of other female singer-songwriters.
Well, and I think Tori Amos was influenced by Joni Mitchell from what Joni Mitchell was doing. Like, if you listen to some of those later Joni Mitchell records where she was sort of getting into the jazz aspect of her music, you can hear where Tori Amos was sort of taking even some of her vocal style from that as well.
Oh yeah, she's definitely in that same line.
Yeah. And Tori Amos covered a Slayer song.
Oh, really?
She covered Raining Blood. And I forget what record. Josh probably knows the album. I have the album, but I can't remember the title of it now.
Well, even Ben Folds, I think, you know, Ben Folds, you know, I think she made piano playing cool again when everything was all about the guitar and grunge and all that. It's like, no, here, I'm playing the guitar, or I'm playing the piano, but my music is as heavy as, you know, anything else you hear on the radio, and it's melodic, and there's almost a Tin Pan Alley quality to it, especially on her first album, Little Earthquakes. You know, she's got very much a Tin Pan Alley kind of a sound that she does. But
and wasn't one of her albums called Boys for Pele?
Yeah, that was her third album.
Yeah, I have that as well.
She I saw a show in the very late 90s of her and Alanis Morissette did a tour together, and that was really something. It was just a whole different vibe than, you know, other things that were going on at that time, and both very powerful performances. It was really good.
All right, well, I don't know, I'm going like old school singer-songwriters here, but I gotta show this guy. He's a Canadian singer-songwriter.
I already did Bryan Adams, Chris.
I know.
I didn't pick this guy because I was hoping you would.
Yeah, I gotta talk about Gordon Lightfoot.
Yeah.
And I've got all of his records. This is his greatest hits called Gord's Gold. He re-recorded a lot of his earlier hits on this album. But I mean, I can't, he's almost in the realm of a Johnny Cash, where his songwriting, at this time, his voice was off the charts.
Yeah.
He had a beautiful voice. I saw him live as well. But his songwriting, I mean, he wrote The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. He wrote If You Could Read My Mind, which I think Elvis Presley thought was, I think Elvis covered that song, I want to say. And he thought it was, a beautiful song. But, Canadian Railroad Trilogy, the song Sundown, he was like, when I think of singer-songwriters, I think of people like Gordon Lightfoot, and he's so Canadian. Now, I'm not Canadian, but when you listen to him, it's almost like you're hearing Canada through your speakers. It's almost like what Rush did for Canada. Rush is a very Canadian band. Bare Naked Ladies. Well, Gordon Lightfoot came from the singer-songwriter realm of that. And I still listen to Gordon Lightfoot's music and I still get goosebumps. The guy could write an amazing song. And you've got to listen to the song, Song for a Winter Night, I believe it's called.
I love that song.
Dude, if that song doesn't move you, then you are dead, because it's amazing.
Yeah, I was going under my L's. I was going to get that album out, and I'm like, Chris is going to talk about it. I don't have to.
Yeah, I got to
job anyway. I love Gordon Lightfoot.
And I know Sam St. John is a big Gordon Lightfoot fan too. He's getting into him. One of his videos, I think Sam St. John's dad sent him some Gordon Lightfoot CDs or whatever. But he's one of these guys that you got to discover. Like, I feel like there's certain records in a collection that you need to have, and I think everybody should have at least one Gordon Lightfoot record in their collection.
I agree, and that's another artist that you can usually find. They're out there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You can usually, and now you might spend a couple more bucks to get some of his bigger albums that are in good shape.
Right.
But
and it's not. I mean, it's not the cool sort of record. It's not like you're going to say, "Hey, check out my Gordon Lightfoot collection." But I don't know. I dig him. I think he's great.
Well, you mentioned the song "If You Could Read My Mind."
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be one of the, greatest like ballad type songs of the 1970s. That's just the lyrics in that song and the way he sings it are just perfect. God, that's a good song.
Yeah.
Hold that album up again, Chris.
Yep.
I want to also mention that Bryan Cranston is his doppelganger.
Yeah. That picture, it really does, doesn't it? Wow. It's a shame now that, Gordon Lightfoot just is a shell of himself vocally. I mean, I would have liked to have seen him, but I mean, I almost feel like if I would see him now, it would, I don't know. I would feel bad.
Yeah, but he still puts on a good show, and he's a showman still. And the stories that he tells between the songs, it's awesome. Like if you have a chance to see him, I would still see him. But
I mean, maybe. And I say this, and I'm not trying to sound like a dick or anything, because Jeff and I, we just saw Michael Nesmith basically in the same boat.
Yeah.
I mean, he couldn't sing nearly as well as he did just a few years ago, and he kept having to leave the stage and come back, but it was still a pleasure to see him.
Who is this Michael Nesmith that you speak of?
I don't know. I'm just monkeying around.
Yeah. He might show up later in my list. You never know.
He originally was going to be on mine.
I'd be surprised if he didn't. All right.
Well, what's nice is that what's cool is the three of us like the Monkees, which is cool.
Yeah, true. We're the ones that out of the Horsemen
flying the Monkees flag.
Yeah,
we should do a Mike Nesmith episode.
We should.
I think we did.
But we have to invite Sam St. John though too, because he's
That'd be a cool idea. Yeah.
Well, plus Sam brings the ladies.
I thought you brought the ladies. You know what?
No, Sam whips his hair around, and
I could never do that.
the freaking ladies just come running. I think I gained at least one subscriber from doing a video.
Did you guys ever have that friend in high school that was always finesse with their hair?
Yeah.
I never could because I had like an afro, so it didn't move. It just
I had very wavy hair, almost like Ken doll hair.
We're gonna have to do an episode where we show our pictures of ourselves in high school.
I used to think I was so like, I used to write poetry in high school. And I thought I was so deep, like I was listening to the Jesus and Mary Chain and you know, I was wearing a peace sign around my neck. I thought I was like the Cat's pajamas.
Did you have the John Lennon mirrored glasses?
No, I didn't have the glasses at that point. But
did you use that term around the girls?
The Cat's pajamas? That's probably why I'm still. That's probably why I'm still single, Gary. Yeah. Anyway,
Jeff.
All right.
Well, I said somebody on my list was going to be somebody I've never talked about before. I don't think I've ever done a video. I don't think I've ever talked about him on this channel before, but he was probably, his popularity was at its peak in the 90s. He had a relatively hit song called Babylon, talking about David Gray. And this is probably his most popular album, White Ladder. But yeah, he hails from the UK. I think he grew up in Wales, but just a very unique sound. On this album, it's kind of interesting because it's like all acoustic bass, but he's got a drum machine behind him, which you would think, oh, that seems very incongruous, but it definitely works. And yeah, I love his voice. I love his songs. He's a piano player, but he also does a lot of stuff acoustically. And it's just, I don't know who I would compare him to, but I love all of his stuff. He's, I don't know, probably got at least 10 albums now. But yeah, it's just very moving and it's melodic. And yeah, I encourage people to check him out. If you're not familiar with him, if you like, you know, Ben Folds, or even if you like, you know, Jeff Buckley or Wilco or stuff like that, I think you'll really enjoy David Gray. His earlier stuff was a little bit more acoustic, but kind of his signature sound was kind of like a folky crossed with a drum machine, which I think this album's a masterpiece. I think every song is great on here. He does a cover of a Soft Cell song, Say Hello, Wave Goodbye, which he totally makes his own. I mean, I've heard the Soft Cell version and it's good, but he just turns it into such a fantastic song. You'd almost think he wrote it, and you'd never guess it was originally a synth pop song. But anyway, David Gray, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't know anything about David Gray, but I think I'm gonna need to get some of his stuff too.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic.
Now, was he always a solo artist?
Yeah, he always. I mean, like I say, he's got a pretty extensive back catalog, but I think he came out of the scene in the early 90s, and he's still putting out stuff today. But yeah, I like him a lot, and I think he's criminally underrated.
I'm thinking of so many people I should have put into this list.
Oh,
We should have done a top 10, but
yeah. Nobody watches past this point anyway. So
right.
And you had great picks. So
yeah, still too much.
My next pick is one that Chris has on his wall. behind him. And one of my favorite singer-songwriters, and that's Mary Chapin Carpenter. I love Mary Chapin Carpenter. Now she is, she's got like Down at the Twist and Shout, I Feel Lucky, Passionate Kisses, Shut Up and Kiss Me. But the crazy thing is, it's like those are probably her biggest hits. And most of her songs don't really sound like that. One of those artists to where it seems like, the songs that are a little bit different than the majority of her songs are the ones that become their radio hits. And I think that's probably because the record company is not always sure what to do with Mary Chapin Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
She's, she was pushed off as a country act, but as, Chris could tell you, she's more of a folk act than she is country.
Yeah.
She has country elements, but definitely not country the way we think of country artists. And, you talk about somebody, and I feel like I'm being repetitive in my descriptions, but a singer-songwriter who can bring out emotions in you. I got some of the titles on here. So Hero in Your Own Hometown is such a great song. Basically talking about your youth and how you thought you were so cool back then, the little things that you did, but underneath there was this underlying fear going through you and your friends. I can see it now where she's talking about an old love, and she sees him with the new boyfriend and everything. There's just so many. Do you have this one, Chris?
I have all of her stuff, Gary. That album rules. And I was going to tell you, do you have The Age of Miracles?
No, I do not have that.
You need this record.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, I'm glad I asked you, because I'm actually putting together a few records to send you, and I bought this and another copy of this CD to send you, but
I've got that.
I will give it to somebody else now.
But since you're talking about Mary Chapin Carpenter, I just want to mention this record too. This is amazing. This is called The Things That We Are Made Of. This was 2016. And like you were saying, Gary, she's known for country, but she's so much more than country.
Yeah.
And there is a song on here called The Middle Ages, which it tears me apart every time I become an emotional pretzel every time I freaking listen to this song. And you would love it. But yeah, anything by Mary Chapin Carpenter is gold.
Oh yeah, this one of her later ones.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sometimes awesome. Just the Sky, Between the Here and Now.
Oh, that's an amazing album.
Stones in the Road.
Stones in the Road is great.
Yeah, that whole album is. There's just so much. This is an artist where I mentioned her hits, and if you're somebody who thinks, well, that doesn't really sound like my bag, man, look up some of her other whole album on YouTube or Spotify, whatever, and listen to some of her other songs, because this to me, this is like an artist where, like, say, somebody like Josh, I feel like would like a lot of these songs, but he would never think to listen, to this artist. And it's a shame. I mean, she's fantastic. And yeah, you talking about, making you an emotional pretzel. Yeah, she has some songs that they could bring tears to your eyes. I mean,
and her new album, I don't know if you have that. It's called The Dirt and the Stars.
No, I haven't ordered it yet, or I haven't seen it, so I'm going to have to order it.
So good. I saw her live too.
There was a tribute album to John Lennon that was called Working Class Hero, and she does a fantastic version of Grow Old with Me.
Oh yeah, I love that version of that song.
Awesome. I never got to see her yet, Chris, but she is doing a tour now. Yeah. And I didn't realize that until just very, very recently. And so I'm going to look that up. I do quick story. We were out in Colorado a couple years ago. My oldest son, that's where he got married. And when we were going, we went down to Denver to go out to eat. And at this theater down there, Mary Chapin Carpenter was going to be playing there the following night or something. And I was like, I should go. I should buy a ticket and drive back down here to see her. And I started really thinking about it. And I think my wife was kind of like maybe okay with the idea.
Yeah.
I go and get our rental car that we got. We got one of these big giant Suburban things. I am coming down the parking garage because everybody's at the restaurant waiting for me. I go, I'll go get the car. So I walk a couple blocks to the parking garage, go over. As I'm driving down, the fact that this car is so fucking long, I hit the side of the, the cement as you know how those things spin down like that. And It's a super sharp turn. And I hit it. And of course, left this big scratch on it. And I remember coming down there, picking everybody up. And I'm just like, I was like, just so mad and everything, thinking, oh my God, this is a rental car. What's going to happen? They're going to charge me out the ass. And I just totally gave up on the idea to say Mary Chapin Carpenter because now I was just focused on the fact of what I've done to this car.
Yeah. You need to see her though. She is amazing.
I do need to see her. I agree.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we're doing this tonight because you guys know I love my metal, but I'm telling you right now, singer-songwriter might be one of my favorite genres of music. I love it. Like, I don't know. I just think it can just bring about so much emotion, which is cool. I love the songwriting. I love the lyrics. I love the presentation. And so I'm glad we're doing this.
I would kind of assume that was your favorite genre, really. Because, you do your own, songs like that and everything. And so, I don't know, it just seems like that's what you would probably like the most. But
yeah, there's nothing like putting on Anthrax State of Euphoria, but there's also nothing like putting on a Mary Chapin Carpenter's album that it's like.
Yeah, well, I think we're all kind of like that.
Definitely. All right, well, I told you I was going to talk about Michael Nesmith, and I'm going to talk about Michael Nesmith, and I'm going to show you his first solo record called The Wichita Train Whistle Sings. And this was recorded in 1968. It's an instrumental album. This is a reissue on his label Pacific Arts, which was his own label. I don't know, Jeff, you can help me. 1968, I would assume this is pre-Monkees, probably.
Well, not pre-Monkees, but it was definitely like around the Birds, the Bees, and the Monkees and the Head soundtrack kind of.
Right. So he was obviously still with the Monkees when he did this. But these are early versions of some of the songs that would appear on his later solo records. Like he does an instrumental version of 9 Times Blue on here. He does actually, these are mostly Monkey songs. Like he does While I Cried, he does Papa Jean's Blues, Don't Call on Me. Now, Tapioca Tundra, that was on Birds, the Bees, and the Monkees, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that had been released before this or what, but this is an instrumental version of that song. But the point is Michael Nesmith is an incredible songwriter. He wrote so many songs for the Monkees, and the three of us know all those songs. But also he went on to be a solo performer. And for anybody who doesn't know, a lot of people cite him as one of the first country rock performers. And he came out with a bunch of records under the moniker of the First National Band. And then he had the Second National Band. A lot of people say he was one of the first people to start the whole idea of MTV with his, music videos and things like that. But, his songwriting, his singing, the way he mixed country and rock, it was just an amazing combination. And I still, every time I listen to Michael Nesmith, I'm like, yeah, that guy could write a freaking song. And this is an interesting album. It's not one of my favorite albums by him, but I wanted to say, I want to show and one of his albums called "And the Hits Just Keep on Coming," where he has the song "Different Drum" that Linda Ronstadt and the Stone Ponies covered. but I don't have it. But I want to make an announcement. I learned about this. I keep mentioning Sam St. John, but Sam St. John had mentioned the record label 7A Records.
Yeah.
And they are re-releasing his album, and the hits just keep on coming. And with bonus tracks. So I just pre-ordered that. So if anybody's into Michael Nesmith, check out the label 7A Records. And Mickey Dolenz is actually coming out with another EP of songs that didn't appear on his Michael Nesmith, album that he did. So I just pre-ordered that as well. So that was a little plug for Mickey Dolenz and Michael Nesmith. But the fact is, Michael Nesmith kicks ass.
Yeah.
So Jeff, I don't know. Have you ordered anything off, or Gary ordered anything off of 7A Records before?
No, but I saw that they were re-releasing that album you just mentioned. The hits keep it coming. And
yeah, because if you go on 7A, they also have like a Peter Tork record on there. I think they might have like some Mickey Dolenz solo stuff on there too. So it's a cool label.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the Monkees, the next artist I'm going to show also was a songwriter for the Monkees, and I'm talking about Harry Nilsson.
Nice.
This is his second album, Aerial Ballet. And Harry Nilsson, he started out as, he worked in a bank during the day, and then at night he kind of moonlighted as a songwriter. But Harry Nilsson has one of the most beautiful voices of any musician, rock or otherwise. And not only did he write, he wrote Cuddly Toy, which the Monkees covered. He wrote Daddy's Song, which the Monkees covered. But he also wrote One, which was a song that Three Dog Night covered. And he himself actually would cover other artists' songs. He did an entire album of Randy Newman songs. He covered a song called, it was one of his most popular songs, is Everybody's Talking, which I think was an artist called Fred Neil, if I'm not mistaken, who actually wrote that song, which is on the Midnight Cowboys soundtrack. And then his probably most popular album was Nilsson Schmielsen, where he worked with producer Richard Petty. Ringo Starr drummed on that album, which has Coconut, which was one of his more popular songs. But just a great songwriter. He never toured because he had extreme stage fright, which I think, unfortunately, kind of limited his popularity. But I love it because, I talk about that Tin Pan Alley songwriting style and like the Brill Building songwriting style. That's definitely Harry Nilsson. And he's got such a melodic quality about him. He wrote if anybody remembers the movie Popeye from the early 80s, Harry Nilsson wrote the soundtrack for that. So just a great, great artist. Unfortunately, he had his excesses and he did a lot of drugs and he was an alcoholic. And so it definitely shortened his life, unfortunately. But just a great, great singer-songwriter. And there's a documentary, if anybody's interested in learning more about Harry Nilsson, called Who is Harry Nilsson and Why is Everybody Talking About Him? And you've got people like Mickey Dolenz interviewed, Robin Williams, Yoko Ono, just so many people are talking about Harry Nilsson and what a gifted artist he was. And unfortunately, over time, he kind of destroyed his voice because he was a chain smoker and he was, doing drugs and he was an alcoholic. And, very unfortunately, he died in the early 90s, but just so talented. And I think if you enjoy, your singer-songwriters like Billy Joel, Elton John, whoever it may be, Harry Nilsson is right up there for sure.
Well, you and Aaron Muth Alamere got me into Harry Nilsson, and he's awesome. Like anybody who would write for the Monkees is A-okay in my book.
Well, plus he was, one of the original Hollywood vampires. It was him and Mickey Dolenz, Alice Cooper, and John Lennon.
Yeah,
those guys. How would you like to be in that group?
Yeah,
have a couple beers with those guys.
Well, and he was like, he really could go toe to toe with Keith Moon as far as partying went. You know, that lost weekend that John Lennon had, Harry Nilsson was definitely the instigator of that. And all, you know, John Lennon actually produced his album Pussycats. And they got up to a lot of shenanigans and things during that time. But he's godfather to Ringo Starr's son, Zach Starkey. But it's just, you know, I can't imagine, you know, he grew up idolizing the Beatles, and then the Beatles are buying his albums and talking about how he's their favorite American artist. And, you know, I mean, I just can't even imagine, but that's how the Beatles loved Harry Nilsson. The Monkees obviously loved Harry Nilsson. I mean, he was such a highly regarded songwriter by so many of my favorite artists. But
yeah, definitely well respected, and he gets plenty of love in the vinyl community.
Absolutely.
That is true.
Great choice.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So we're down to our final pick, right?
I should have showed Lou Reed. Damn it.
Would have been another good one.
My last pick is one of the obvious ones, I guess, but I can't help it. I consider this guy to be, you know, just one of the premier songwriters of the 20th century. And that's Bruce Springsteen.
Nice.
That's his songwriting is what attracted me to him, because originally as a kid, when I first started hearing Springsteen, I was not impressed. I didn't really like him. I didn't really get him. It wasn't really until this album, which, you know, most people know this, but this is an all acoustic album that he just did on a little 4-track recorder, did a lot of it in a hotel room and whatnot. And this was the album that I got this and I listened to it and I was like, oh my God, these are such cool songs. I mean, I would put Springsteen on this list that we're doing if he only did this and the Ghost of Tom Joad album. But the fact that, you know, you take which is another fantastic, because mostly acoustic album.
That's my favorite Bruce Springsteen album, Ghost of Tom Joad.
It's great.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, his songwriting is almost unmatched as far as how he can develop characters in a story. You know, he started out his first couple albums, you know, and these real long, wordy songs, you know, and he had all these crazy names and a lot of it, you know, and it was good, but by his third album, Born to Run, he started to, you know, hone it in a little bit and started to make a more realistic sounding characters and stories. He was still pretty wordy as far as that goes, but he had really caught on to something. And it's the fact that he is just an amazing songwriter. And he's somebody, you know, yeah, he's known for having one of the greatest bands ever in the E Street Band, putting on these amazing live performances. But he can also sit down and do an entire show on just him and an acoustic guitar and, you know, harmonica, and you're still mesmerized. I saw him once. I saw him on the Ghost of Tom Joad tour.
Wow.
And I saw him in a theater. It's fantastic. I mean, it was, you know, as exciting almost as seeing him with the E Street Band. But, you know, and when you think of the songs that he did on Born in the USA and Tunnel of Love, it's just amazing. I put him above pretty much all other songwriters. You know, I'm not saying he's necessarily my favorite artist, but he's up there just strictly on, you know, how fantastic of songs that he writes. You know, we talked about Mary Chapin Carpenter and some of these other artists who really move you. I don't know if there's any artist that has moved me as much as what Springsteen does in some of his songs. The way he develops these characters, gives them, you know, life. You can either put yourself into that character, or you know somebody who's like that character. You know, somehow there's some part of you that is in that story that's totally relatable, and he just does an amazing job of that.
He's a great storyteller.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's got it.
That's an awesome choice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, this isn't my number one, but I got to give a plug for this. I'm pulling an Aaron Newth Alamere here. Got to talk about Neil Diamond, and I'm not joking around either. Jonathan Livingston Seagull is a killer record. I got all of Neil Diamond stuff. Taproot Manuscript is amazing. I don't know if you like that cover, Jeff, or not, but listen, Neil Diamond is so cool that Rick Rubin, who produced Slayer and Run DMC and Danzig, he produced a couple Neil Diamond records. So that was just my little plug for Neil Diamond. Now, my number one is to piggyback off of what Gary said. This artist that I'm going to show covered a couple Bruce Springsteen songs. He covered Johnny 99 and he covered Highway Patrolman, and that is Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash is my number one singer-songwriter. This happens to be my favorite album by him. Hello, I'm Johnny Cash. But I also wanted to show my favorite live album. A lot of people say Folsom Prison is his best live album, and I can see why, but I tend to go to San Quentin. I like San Quentin a lot better. But Johnny Cash is an amazing singer-songwriter. Talk about influential. He and Dylan recorded songs together. Dylan looked up to Johnny Cash. And, Johnny Cash sang songs that were political. He sang love songs. He wrote political songs. He wrote love songs. He wrote country songs. He wrote folk songs. He sang with Chris Christopherson, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson. Billions of people have covered his stuff, and he's just, to me, my number one songwriter. And I think he should definitely be in the top 5 for most people for singer-songwriters. If there wasn't a Johnny Cash, there wouldn't be a lot of the artists that we're listening to nowadays. And I think that's a fair statement. And he's influenced everybody. Like, even metal bands will be like, yeah, I love Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash is cool. We love his song, Ring of Fire or whatever. And he's just a cool artist. And Rick Rubin, the last albums that Johnny Cash did with Rick Rubin are some of the most amazing albums. And I know people have talked about them before, but, here's one more thing I'll say about Johnny Cash is he was able to take a song and make it his own. And here's an example: 9 Inch Nails' Hurt. Yeah. I was never really a huge 9 Inch Nails fan, but Johnny Cash, it's almost like that song was written for him and he made it his own. I almost consider it a Johnny Cash song. And
I think most people do at this point.
Yeah, and I'm sorry for anybody who's like a huge 9 Inch Nails fan or whatever, and I have nothing against 9 Inch Nails, but that's a Johnny Cash song in my book.
Oh, but once Johnny Cash covered a song, that was a Johnny Cash song. It no longer was, a Shel Silverstein song, or it was no longer a 9 Inch Nails song. It was no longer a Depeche Mode song.
Right. Yeah, because he did Personal Jesus too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh man, I should have put Shel Silverstein in my list too, because he came out with some records too.
Mm-hmm.
My sons just went and seen Volbeat and Ghost.
Yeah.
And Volbeat did part of Ring of Fire.
Yeah.
So,
well,
talking about the influence.
Social Distortion covered Ring of Fire too.
Well, Social Distortion is a band you can obviously see would be influenced by Johnny Cash. I mean,
I don't know. I mean, Johnny Cash, I don't know. He's got to be a top 5 singer-songwriter in almost anybody's list. I mean, again, I'll say it, if there wasn't a Johnny Cash, there wouldn't be a lot of the artists we're listening to nowadays.
Yeah, very
loved
by country and rock for sure.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Waving my Johnny Cash flag.
Got to be a black flag.
Black flag, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, mine, wrapping things up here, is going to be an artist who was predominantly in the 90s. And he's very much a tragic figure. And he was somebody who I think never expected to have any amount of fame or popularity. He recorded music just for the love of making music. He was somebody who loved the Beatles. He loved Kiss. He loved, you know, a lot of the same bands that I loved in the 1970s. And he started out a band called Heat Miser, which was kind of a punk, more of like a hardcore kind of band. But his music is really different from the band that he started out in. And I'm talking about Elliott Smith. This is my favorite album by him. It's called Figure Eight. And he had some success before this album. He had a song on the Good Will Hunting soundtrack called Miss Misery. He actually was nominated for a Grammy for that. But he was just a very, very insecure, very vulnerable singer-songwriter. Some of his earliest songs, he writes about drug addiction, even though at the time he never tried drugs. But as he became more popular, as he, you know, as his music started to gain a wider popularity and he was in demand more and started to tour, he actually got into heroin pretty heavily. This was the last studio album that was released during his lifetime. I think this was released in 2000. And this was a major label that, I forget the record label. It was like, I don't know if it was Interscope or something, but it was pretty much all downhill for him after here. He got into drugs very heavily, got into heroin, which made him paranoid. And there's stories of him doing live performances where he would forget the lyrics to his own songs and would just kind of end a performance in the middle of it. And became very paranoid, was sure that his record company was out to get him. And he actually died from what is believed to be a self-inflicted steak knife wound in the heart. He allegedly stabbed himself in the heart. I mean, it's just a really tragic story because he was so gifted. Definitely, if you're a fan of the Beatles, I mean, he's got Mellotron on here, but he's just, his lyrics and his music is so vulnerable, but it's so beautiful. It's heavy, it's hard in places. And, you know, if you like Kiss, if you like the Beatles, I mean, those are the two, I think, biggest influences on his music. But yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about him. It's really, kind of a tragedy just because of the music that he could have continued to make. And I think each of his albums is brilliant. I think he had about 5 or 6 albums during his lifetime that he put out, but just a genius singer-songwriter. And, you know, I'd almost compare him a little bit to Nick Drake, if you like Nick Drake. And as I'm saying that, I'm wishing I would have included Nick Drake on my list because I'm a huge Nick Drake fan, but he's almost like a 90s version of Nick Drake. And, you know, unfortunately, he just could not handle success. And, you know, his psyche kind of unraveled. And his last album is, I think it's called From a Basement on the Hill. But definitely worth checking out. And I know Josh is a big Elliott Smith fan, so he can back me up on this. But
is that the album? Is that the album to get?
Yeah, I would say definitely. Yeah, Figure Eight is probably his best album, most accessible album. And I'm just trying to think if I got anything else here in reach, but this is another great album to get. This is Either Or. XO is another great album to check out. This is the album. This is the last album. It was released after his death. There were some sessions that he did for his next album. But it was, you know, again, the album before that was in 2000. He died in 2003. But just because he was so messed up with the drugs, he just could not get it together. He fired his producer, fired his manager. He was like just extremely paranoid, thought that the record company was like watching him, bugging his phone. I mean, he just got totally, unfortunately, very messed up in the head. But his songs are beautiful. Yeah, there's just so much, no matter what music you're into, he just does so many different styles. But yeah, he's definitely my number one favorite singer-songwriter.
Wow.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna need to get some of his stuff now too.
Yeah,
For sure.
Two songwriters I want to talk about before we end and they're two female country songwriters, Loretta Lynn and Dolly Parton. I got to mention the two of them too. They're amazing songwriters.
yeah, they really are. That's good, because a lot of country artists don't write their own songs,
Right.
but they were both songwriters.
Yeah, and I think what they did for women in the music business and women in country especially was pretty amazing.
Somehow we never mentioned this guy, but
Oh, Neil Young. Yeah, we didn't mention Lou Reed. We didn't mention, like Jeff was saying, Nick Drake. We didn't mention, Dylan. We didn't talk about James Taylor.
Carly Simon.
Yeah.
Van Morrison.
Carole King.
Yeah, I mean, I have a Joni Mitchell album up here, but I didn't talk about Joni Mitchell. I mean, there's
Jimmy
Buffett.
Buffett.
Jimmy Buffett is a really good singer-songwriter. I like Jimmy Buffett. You don't like Jimmy Buffett, Gary?
No.
I like him.
He thinks he's a pirate.
Well, we also didn't mention Elton John and Billy Joel.
The only reason I wouldn't mention Elton John is because he's a co-writer.
Yeah, that was the thing. I had Elton John like on my first list, and I'm like, well, technically he didn't write his whole song. Bernie Taupin wrote all the lyrics, so I went in a different direction after that. But
Billy Joel
definitely deserves to be on this.
Yeah.
yeah,
Lawless.
Richard Marx.
Yeah. Debbie Gibson. She wrote a lot of her own stuff. Yeah.
There is one artist I'd like to mention, and that is, her name is Chantel Kriviashik, and she started in the late 90s, and I'm pretty sure both you guys would like her. I'm not 100% sure about you, Jeff, but Chris would.
Cool. And all the CDs Jeff is mentioning, like I look up the fucking Elliott Smith album on Amazon, the CD is $53, so it's obviously out of print.
See,
So
Jeff does that shit on purpose.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jeff. Now I'll look on eBay, see if I can find it.
Every time I hear Elliott Smith, I am always thinking of Elliot Easton from the Cars.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Every time I would see that name, I think, oh, that's a guy from the Cars. It's like, no, it's not.
Don't shit on Neil Diamond. Don't listen to what Jeff says.
Exactly.
I didn't say anything about him. I have never disparaged his music, but his album covers, I think for the most part.
Well, here is he taking a shit on the beach here? Or?
Yeah, I mean,
September morning.
Yeah.
And well, by and large, like, okay, the rest of the album covers are fine, but just the two that I did episodes on.
I mean, You Don't Bring Me Flowers with Streisand, that song, man, that's amazing. I love that tune.
Yeah, that album.
I do, yeah.
I said, play me.
I said, yep, you got it.
Look at the hair.
I know.
Right?
Wow. All right, well.
All right, well, thank you, fellas. I appreciate all your contributions. And next week, we're going to have a very special episode. I think we're going to have a special guest who has
Ooh.
never been on our Thursday night episodes before. In fact, we might have a large crowd for the next one because hopefully Aaron and Josh will be able to join us. And this mystery guest, who is not Sam St. John.
Sorry, ladies. Sorry, ladies.
Yeah.
Here's a hint. It'll be another sausage fest.
But Gary and I will be there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Chick magnets.
Yeah, that's exactly what we are.
All right. Well, everybody have a great evening. Thanks for watching and take care.